Israel-Poland relations comprise diplomatic relations between Israel and Poland. At least 220,000 Israeli citizens are of Polish Jewish origin. Both countries are members of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the Union for the Mediterranean, and the United Nations. Israel has an embassy in Warsaw, Poland, and Poland has an embassy in Tel Aviv, Israel. The Polish ambassador to Israel is Marek Magierowski, while the newly appointed Israeli ambassador to Poland is Yaakov Livne, and charged d'affaires Tal Ben Ari Yaon. Starting in the late 900s, Poland was home to one of the largest Jewish communities in Europe. In World War II and the Jewish genocide perpetrated by Germany, much of Poland's Jewish community was wiped out and the few who survived emigrated to other countries, with about 70,000 emigrating to Israel. On the 29th of November 1947, as part of the Soviet bloc, Poland voted in favor of the United Nations partition plan for Palestine, which led to the establishment of the State of Israel. Poland, also as part of the Soviet bloc, recognized Israel on the 19th of May 1948 and established diplomatic relations. In May 1948, Polish-born David Ben-Gurion became Israel's first prime minister. In September 1948, Israel opened a diplomatic mission in Warsaw. Poland continued to follow Soviet policy towards Israel. After 1951, relations deteriorated as the Soviet Union significantly increased involvement in the Arab world. In June 1967, after the Six-Day War, Poland joined the Soviet bloc in severing diplomatic relations with Israel. In 1986, Poland initiated contacts with Israel, and both countries soon opened interest offices in the other country. And in 1988 an Israel-Poland Chamber of Commerce was formed. In 1989, Poland's communist government fell, and in November 1989 Polish-born Israeli Deputy Prime Minister Shimon Peres visited Poland, paving the way for the resumption of diplomatic relations. During his visit, Peres met with Polish President Wojciech Jaruzelski and Prime Minister Tadeusz Mazowiecki. Full diplomatic relations were restored on the 27th of February 1990, leading to expanded political, military, economic, and cultural cooperation between the two countries. In May 1991, Polish President Lech Walesa visited Israel. In 1995, Israel signed an association agreement with the European Union which includes free trade and came into effect in 2000. In 2004, on Poland joining the EU, the free trade provisions of the EU agreement apply to trade between Israel and Poland. In 2016, trade between Israel and the EU totaled €34.3 billion, while trade between Israel and Poland was $682 million United States dollars. Israel's main exports to Poland include gas turbines, packaged medicaments, calcium phosphate, fruits and vegetables and medical instruments. Poland's main exports to Israel include food-based products, textiles processing machines, vehicle chassis, cars, buses, dairy and wheat. There are regular flights between Israel and Poland by the following airlines: Arkia, LL, Enta Air, LOT Polish Airlines, Ryanair, Travel Service and Wizz Air. Over the years, both Israel and Poland have signed numerous bilateral agreements including an agreement on cooperation in culture, science and education, air transport agreement, agreement on technical cooperation in dairy development, and an agreement on cooperation and mutual assistance in customs matters. In early 2018, both chambers of the Polish Parliament adopted an amendment to the Act on the Institute of National Remembrance, criminalizing the ascription to Poles collectively of complicity in World War II, Jewish Holocaust-related or other war crimes committed by the Axis powers, and condemning use of the expression, Polish death camp. The law sparked a crisis in Polish-Israeli relations. At the Munich Security Conference on the 17th of February that year, Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said, "It is not going to be seen as criminal to say that there were Polish perpetrators, as there were Jewish perpetrators, as there were Russian perpetrators, as there were Ukrainian perpetrators, Not only German perpetrators, his remark prompted a controversy and condemnation by prominent Israeli politicians, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The crisis was resolved in late June that year when the Polish and Israeli prime ministers issued a joint communiqué endorsing research into the Jewish Holocaust and condemning the expression Polish concentration camps. Relations again deteriorated in February 2019 when, during a visit to Poland, Netanyahu said, "Poles collaborated with the Nazis." Musk quotes of this in the media as "the Poles collaborated with the Nazis," led Morawiecki to consider cancelling his planned visit to Israel the following month for a Visegrad Group summit. Netanyahu's office clarified that this was a Musk quote by the Jerusalem Post. And he did not say, "the Poles," but "a not insignificant number of Poles." An explanation accepted by the Polish government.